let's get started. I am running late, y'all. I am sorry. I'm gonna get the word out. We have had some background stuff going on in my family. I am not going to put our business out there, but needless to say, it was a bit of a stressful day for me. But we are here, we are live. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. I'm your host, Kalari GXC. For those of you who don't know by now, I've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So if you are shocked, hello, welcome to the chat. Whew, tonight we are going to talk about education. Why? Because I feel like it has been the cornerstone of so many debates, especially political and social. And I think I need to break down a lot of the issues I see with education. One of the reasons why I have this quote up from my friend Skoll is it's true. We are in a phase of dark ages where people are banning books. We have this county in Tennessee that has decided that the book Mouse, which I own a digital copy of, I bought it years ago because A, I'm a fan of Art Spiegelman, but two, I've always loved history. And Mouse was a way to show my son, especially once he became old enough to understand the horrors of what happened back in World War II and Nazi Germany without it being so visceral. Because as I spoke last week, talking about why I was so upset with people like RFK likening the vaccine mandates to the Holocaust, too many people who don't understand history downplay it. The Holocaust was not a joke. The Holocaust was not the same as your government telling you to get a life saving vaccine. The Holocaust was people being exterminated for their religious beliefs, the way they looked, their disabilities, and their sexual orientation. And the scary fact of it was the German government did this to their citizens. And to have a book like Mouse make it more palatable, and I'm putting it lightly because there was some rough scenes in there. You cannot tell these horrors in a sanitized way. So yes, there were a bit more graphic things like nudity and language or whatnot. Hey, Beans. But to try to morally say that the reason they banned these books was because of the nudity, when you know that these eighth graders that they're supposedly protecting are exposed to way more. I don't buy it, Tennessee. And like Oscar Wilde said, the books that the world call immoral are often the books that show the world its own shame. And the parallels are key. These people have been screaming about CRT and being taught anti woke logic for the last few years. But Mouse is only one of the many books they have been going after in school boards. They went after Alice Walker books. Those of you who don't understand series like Beloved and all of that, I understand the days of slavery is in our country. We're still not learning it proper. And I'm going to get to that today as well. Because we had some ashy ass hoteps starting their nonsense. And I had to go off about that. Because some of yous, as I made the comment here, and we talked about the Challenger. It was a lot of stuff today, y'all, that I had to deal with history wise. And yes, today is the 30th anniversary of the Challenger, Space Shuttle Challenger. I don't want to call it explosion. We falsely believed that it was an explosion that happened. And while the O-rings did catch fire, it was actually a fire. So there's just a lot to process. But I said, daily reminder that the transatlantic slave trade did not just stop in America. So if you ashy asses got an issue with any of our Caribbean kin, you've got a problem with me. And it was a good dialogue because I think a lot of us don't understand just how deep the slave trade was. Let me switch the camera over. And that ties into education as well. But a lot of people, when they think of slavery, especially, they think only in America and only in the South. They don't understand how prevalent the slave trade was. How many in the continent of North and South America both felt the effects of the slave trade, and the Caribbean itself. There's a reason why African diaspora is so widespread. And not just because we migrated. You can't take forced migration out of the equation for a lot of us. And the problem is when we talk about slavery, because they don't want us talking about slavery because it's deemed CRT, people don't understand that no, it wasn't segregated to the South. And yes, while we fought a war, even that is full of fucking white savior myths. Because Lincoln himself was not for freeing the slaves. That was a myth that they were teaching us since kindergarten, that after learning real history and having actual historians verify, I can confidently say that in his own words, he said if he could have found a way to end this situation without ending slavery, he would have. Because unfortunately, for most people, you need to understand just how lucrative it was for your ancestors to deny my ancestors' humanity and get the free labor from it. To rape them and have them have babies that they could sell to other plantations. But you just don't want to learn that. It's CRT, it's the boogeyman. And the problem with our current education systems, and I'm saying systems because it's not just here in America, it has been ripe for exploitative measures since the beginning because it wasn't meant for every human. Education is supposed to be that. It's supposed to be about us learning. But have you ever noticed how segregated education is? And I don't just mean the obvious segregations. Class plays a role. Money has always shaped the way we humans function, but it is so insidious within our educational system that it's not even funny anymore. No Child Left Behind was such a fucking lie that it chafes me to hear it. George Bush's big No Child Left Behind, where they literally penalized schools for not hitting the federal test taking mandates, and they knew which schools would be dinged by said federal test taking mandates. And even now, virtual schools, which a lot of us have had to put our kids in, are struggling with our government's weird ass financing guidelines. Because it all comes down to money. And if they can deny certain kids a certain education, they can make sure that they end up in factory jobs. There was a good expose, and I probably should pull it up now. Let me see if I can find it before I do all that. Was talking to a friend of mine, Curious, about that. There was an email that I got from Kiddo School because they have, at the age of 16, you have to start going to job training or something. And they do factory things, and Amazon bought into one of those. And my brain was like, I'm not against big companies, going to schools and showing people where they can get jobs. I am against the anti-union propaganda that Amazon tries to push in the high schools already. Like, they're already indoctrinating good little factory workers. And there has been a lot of that going on in our high school. Even virtual schools don't get away from it. They have structured our school systems to continue the serf mentality. And if you don't understand what the serf mentality is, I'm glad you tuned in tonight, because you're going to get a bit of history. I hope you like history, because if you don't, you're in the wrong seat. Let me see. I'm not even going to look for that now. It's a mess, y'all. But there's a great article. I will try to find the link and add it to the show notes at the end, and on YouTube, where this lady had an expose about Amazon paying to have these courses in our high school. And I tell you that our systems are ripe for exploitation for a reason. Welcome to the chat, Zayana. And this isn't me shitting on factory workers. If that is how you make your living, you do you. This is not me looking down, because that's another product of our society that our education plays a role in too. That some jobs are more lucrative, and that's what you should be pushing for. But that is not the mindset we should be having as a society. But you know what? Divide and conquer is just that. And the problem with our current education system is it's exploited. And in the digital age, it's going to be worse, because whoever has the most money, whoever has the most ear within our government, has the influence. And their state government has shown that. That is why books are being banned, like Mouse and Alice Walker Works. And that's why they go after poets like Maya Angelou now in Texas as CRT. Anything black is now considered CRT. I'm looking forward to Black History Month now, y'all. In West Virginia, you can literally narc on any teacher that is too woke. It's a mess. And this has been ongoing for years. It was a toxic cocktail of ignorance and fuckery and right-wing ideology that has infiltrated not only our school boards, but our state and local legislators who push this stuff. If you look at the message that guys like Abbott are running on right now, guys like Kemp is running, what Northam ran for in Virginia, it's all the same thing. We don't want our kids learning actual history. We don't want our kids learning empathy. We are A-okay with them believing that they are the model race for our country and that any diversity is CRT. And that boogeyman has been prevalent for way too many years, but channeled by Fox News these last 2 years. And you hear it almost all the time now. I wrote a little Medium blog post about it. But I'm really heated about this because there was this Texas principal whose only crime was to post a picture of him and his wife, who happens to be a white woman, on their honeymoon. The people in Texas didn't like that. They labeled him, not anything he taught because he's a principal, the principal himself, as critical race theory. And that man had to step down from his job, or maybe he was fired. I gotta look at that article again because it's so asinine. But this is what we're up against. And in the digital age, banning books is so fucking ridiculous. This shit used to fly years ago. I will give them that. Years ago, when you banned a book, yeah, people were SOL. But you're in the digital age trying to ban a graphic novel, Tennessee. No wonder you're so low in our national scores. But even saying that, I'm not digging national scores. And that is why I want to talk to you guys about education and why I feel like it is the new frontier to channel out good little serfs. Now, a bit of a history lesson without being boring, because I like history and I want you to like it too. But we come from an age where the feudal days were a thing. And we humans tend to repeat a lot of things from those days. We have lords and ladies on the land that have a lot of money, have amassed fortunes and big properties, and own a lot while the few own a lot while the masses do not. And this has always been a cycle within the human population. But what killed me about medieval times, and I did a lot on the serfs. I even did a whole diorama back in the day because I am a history nerd about feudal times. What killed me about the serfs is that they got crumbs in life and were told by their king that their toiling in life would get them a better afterlife. And people believed that. They worked their asses to the bones. They did farming, they did wood cutting, they did animal husbandry. They worked their asses off from cradle to the grave for somebody who probably couldn't wipe their own asses because they were told that was their lot in life and they got a few crumbs here and there from the kingdom that lauded over them. Serf life sucked. If you got sick, you were SOL. If they wanted you to pay extra taxes, which cracks me up because the few times the serfs got a meager pittance, whether it was food or whatnot, they could also be taxed for said pittance. It was hell. And we humans keep repeating that. Serfdom 2.0 is every fucking job that we have worked while big name businessmen play on the yacht, or get in an airship, or go into space, or shoot a truck into space just because they can. Yous have been good little serfs for lords, and I can't blame you for it because our educational system trains us for that. There's a reason why. People tell me all the time, oh, you're so intelligent, Tin. What school did you go to? I have an associate degree in a technical college. I realized that the educational system wasn't for me beyond just my skin tone. I literally had a math teacher look me in the eye and say, "It's okay if you don't get this math. You're not going to need to know it anyway." Confidently. And I love to say that it was just because I'm black, but he was like that with every girl in the class. Full on, old ass, 1950s mentality, misogynistic meathead. I will never forget that man. Unlike the history teacher who I gave his name because I felt like he really opened my eyes to history and gave me a love for learning that I am grateful for, I'm not going to slander this hopefully now dead guy's name, but his attitude really shaped my attitude towards learning. It became something that I did because I knew I had to have a piece of paper so that I could get a job, but I stopped loving learning after that. And I think that's a lot of people here in this country and beyond. You go into a building with hopes that you're going to learn something. You get a grade that tells you, oh, you're not learning fast enough, or you're not in this percentile. You're not given enough interactive learning capabilities. And what happens to students that have a passion for things? Unless your school has the funding, forget about music. Forget about anything that is a sports related. And if your school isn't on the top of that, even if you have a sports ability, you're fucked. If you live in a rural area, you're fucked. If you live in a too urban area, you'll be lucky if you get in-date materials for any of your courses. If you live in certain regions, you're taught whatever that government wants you to believe. Whether it's things like the Civil War was about states' rights. Ignore the fact that people were actually treated like non-human cattle. We're going to lie and say it's about states' rights. Our education system has been ripe for exploitation for the longest time, but it's getting worse in the digital age instead of better. We literally have devices that could give you education, active, interactive education at your fingertips, and people are against it. And the reason is we have been conditioned to believe that schools are nothing but a place to drop off our kids and babysit them while we do work or whatever else. And that mentality burns me up too. Teachers are not babysitters. Teachers are not there to keep your kids company for hours while you're at work. Teachers are there supposedly to help your kids learn. But unfortunately, a lot of teachers are in there to continue the system of churning out good little serfs. Welcome to the chat, Respect. And the problem with our current system is with more kids coming up with neurotypical diagnosis, with a lot more kids with autism, having school be interesting, engaging, and focused on something that kids will grasp onto is more important than ever. Dropout rates are still alarming, but who can blame them? When the only reason to go to school is perhaps a free meal if you're not denied, because some counties do that too. Oh, too poor? You can't eat here. Classism has destroyed our school system. And don't even get me started on racism, because it wasn't but 50 years ago that we had to fight just to integrate schools. So y'all can miss me on trying to challenge me on the problems I have with education tonight, but I will hopefully come with solutions to this as well. I don't just want to ding the system without bringing vital solutions that can help us, because we need help. Education is not engaging at all. I sit through some of the stuff my son goes through, and it numbs your brain how boring it is. And this is virtual school. You think they would have more interactive things. And I notice when he does better in his coursework. When we're doing things for IXL and you get those interactive videos and he's actually seeing the visuals. And I know not every kid needs that, but with all the kids that have diagnosed neurotypical issues, whether it's autism, whether it's ADHD, the fact that we have not shifted lessons to really focus on helping kids with visual stimulation, with auditory stimulation, I told Greg early, and I mean this, a lot of the stuff that I remember from school was done in song. Breaking down things like the Great Lakes into hominins, homes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. That stuff was taught to me. My boyfriend didn't get that kind of lesson. I'm telling you, y'all, there's a regional issue, but there's also a global issue with the way we teach our kids. The fact that some kids will never have access to learning in this world still as well, even though we are literally in the digital age. It doesn't make sense. And then when you add on the different factors between the people with money wanting their kids to have a better education than the lessers, and you have the churches who put their hands into the mix. And I know people get really leery when I talk about church stuff, but it needs to be said. Especially the Catholic Church did us no favors in the realm of education. When you get to pick and choose what curriculums are allowed, when you get to pick and choose what kids can learn and what they can't learn, when you discourage any kind of challenge or question, when you tell kids they have to learn by this certain age, and if they don't, they get left back. When you treat students as if they're supposed to know stuff already, instead of being students who are there to learn from you. When your nuns and priests can drone on but cover up darker things going on. The truth of the matter is, our current state of education has always been under the influence of people with agendas. And that is the major issue we are seeing come to a head in this digital age. Exactly. And a lot of my family, because my family is very mixed. We have the majority black, obviously, but we have a lot of Hispanic, Asian, and white people in my family. So my Catholic cousins would go to school. They started out going to regular public school and going to Sacred Heart on Wednesdays, and then they transferred to Sacred Heart completely. Because a lot of people in my family thought Catholic school is a better education. How many of them heifers were having babies by 16? And this is not to shame my cousins. But when you constantly have an education system that doesn't want to teach you proper sexual education, denies that sex is anything but a moralistic obligation to have the babies, what the fuck do you expect to happen? Every single one of my cousins that went to Catholic school were single moms before the age of 18. And I'm not saying that as judgment like I'm better. I mean, I did wait till 27 to have my kid, and I was in a committed relationship that I thought was marriage. But judgment aside, when you have this weird moral obligation to shield kids from the reality of life and try to cater them into nice little Catholic boxes or nice little parochial boxes, they act out. Big surprise. But real education needs to be just that. One of the things that I probably will link to my YouTube video, and I'm thankful to my friend Jocelyn's mother. I want to get her name right, and I'm blanking on it right now. She gave me an amazing video because she went to school in Chicago back in the day. And she went to what was called the alternative school. And it's funny how they always call these schools alternative. And it was a school for people who wanted to learn specific jobs and specific career paths. And they were taught by people who are already in those fields. And we need more schools like that. If you have the ability to tinker and engineer, you should be able to go to a school, whether it's an elementary, junior high school, or high school, that gears you towards it. If you have the ability to fix things, if you have the ability to farm, if you have the ability to orate or play music or even sports, schools can and should be catered to the kids' passion. Because when you stoke the fires of a kid's passion, they take education more directly to the schools. We need to be able to formulate with groups ways to teach our kids and teach ourselves. Right now, I'm learning German. I use a lot of online apps. There's Duolingo, there's Babbel, there's a lot of ways to learn online. Duolingo is very structured. I was shocked by it at first. I was like, what am I going to do with this app? And now I use it every day. And you practice just a little bit every day. We are literally in the age where apps can be formed, created to help people learn. My goal is to make enough, and I've said this to Axiom, is why I've been writing up a storm and going to release a lot of my work public, is to make enough to where not a school. I want to make it clear that I don't believe in structured school systems anymore. I want a community learning center where people can come. You need to learn how to cook. You should be able to learn how to cook basic meals. If you want to learn how to fix things, and I know people are like, oh, you can do that in a community college. Can you though? This is for every age group to sit, hear stuff, interact, learn things. People want to learn things. What they don't want is a grading system telling you, oh, you're too stupid to get it. You're not learning things fast enough. We soak in information all the time. And we can cater information to people in a way they get it. One of the things I love about history is there are just so many amazing ways to take it in. Whether you're into actual documentaries from people like Ken Burns, who isn't always my favorite, he's a bit long-winded, to Adam Ruins Everything. I literally would watch Adam's Reanimated History with my kid. Not because it's the easiest to sit through. He was pretty much brutal because it was made for adults. But I think that more teenagers would get a kick out of stuff like that. They're not going to show it in schools, though. Especially in schools like McQuinn County. Because Lord knows naked mice give them the vapors. But we have very interactive videos, cartoons and animations, if that's your jam, that we can put out there to help our kids, because we are fighting the culture war. And I hate to do that because it feels like Fox News propaganda at that point, but they're the foot soldiers for that fuckery. They have been indoctrinating people against anything deemed too woke, anything deemed not accessible enough to their hate mob. They literally had Tuckhead fucking Carlson lamenting the non-sexualization of an Eminem. Dude, are you that hard up? Is your wife not giving you any to where Eminem's costume change is making you that upset? Literally seen a clip, and this is why I say I'm gonna start pruning my social media, because I shouldn't be seeing Tuckhead Carlson clips on my Twitter, y'all. But him ranting about the sexualization of a piece of candy mascot is ridiculous. But this is how they do it. They get into these people's head who have already had over 50 years of indoctrination of us versus them. Of you're the real Americans, as Mitch McConnell tries to push. Of they're just going to come and ruin your neighborhoods and turn them into war zones. Look at Chicago. Look at Chicago. Outside a few areas where every city has those few areas, Chicago's a pretty city. I watch a lot of travel blogs. I love the food bloggers. They go all over those places. But if you listen to conservative media, oh, it's a war zone. Y'all need to stop allowing this lethal indoctrination of them. This shit has been so bad that these people refuse to get a vaccine that can keep themselves safe. That is the power of misinformation within our education system. It is why they're storming our school boards, protesting wearing a mask. I had to prune a lady from Canada, so it's not just here in the U.S. I had to block her because I went to her timeline after she made some asinine reply to me about, while racism is bad, people made fun of my name. And I wanted to feel sorry for her because nobody should have to deal with their name being made fun of. But it was already irking me that once again, like clockwork, a white person jumped into my mentions as I was dinging somebody about the Supreme Court stuff, and don't worry, y'all, I'm going to get on that in a few seconds. But her response to me, as I was telling this lady who was lamenting how unfair it is for them to pick a black lady for SCOTUS, that most of us have had to deal with people just looking at our names and throwing our applications into the garbage because they're too exotic, too black for them. So when I have somebody come at me about their name being mocked, whether they're black, white, or anything else, I don't want them to feel attacked. So I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt as she tried to downplay racism in my fucking mentions, which, is a bone for me that you don't want to pick. But she did it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling like fighting this follower right now. And then another good friend, because we witches watch out for each other, said, it is bad that you got mocked for your name, but what's this weird trucking thing that you're pushing? And why do you back guys like Jack Probasic? And if you don't know who Jack Probasic is, you're a lucky person. He's a bigot. I'm sure that if he heard me say his name, he would probably try to challenge me. I don't want to deal with you. Stay in your lane. You're racist. The problem with people like that is they follow people like me to give themselves credibility. This Canadian lady, and she is an outright bigot, an anti-masking bigot at that. So when I say that this ignorance is spreading throughout our school systems, I mean just that. And that weird trucking convoy was another anti-vax, anti-mask thing, and it's been seeping through our school system for years now. Don't trust the government. We can't teach real history. It'll hurt white kids' feelings. You don't care that history has been notoriously cruel to non-white kids. So it's okay for us to go through it, but not learn about it? Make that make sense. And the problem with our educational system has continued these dummies into feeling bold to say stuff like, well, why is Biden picking a black woman for the SCOTUS? And let me tell you something about the Supreme Court. It is already heavily slated in Mitch McConnell's favor. That was his goal the whole entire time during President Obama's presidency. He made sure that every nomination that President Obama tried to put through, including Merrick Garland, the guy that you're dinging as, where is he? Through. He made sure that President Obama could not get his Supreme Court nomination. These same people that ran Beer Guy, I like beer, and Justice Handmaiden, Miss Amy Coney, you can have a baby and just put it up for adoption, Barrett, through, are now saying, oh, what's Biden's rush? Why has he got to rush the Supreme Court justice? Because Biden has come out. He tweeted it. He said it. He put his chest into it that he is going to nominate a black woman to the SCOTUS. And this nation is losing its mind because any sense of diversity not only highlights certain people's mediocrity, but then they start getting in their fields about, how is this equality? How is this equality? Y'all, we have had over 116 Supreme Court justices. Out of all of them, I believe only 4 or 5 have been women. And guess how many of those women have been black? And if you say more than 0, you're a dummy. I'm not even playing with y'all tonight. I'm heated about this. The fact that we even have to wait for a man like Joe Biden to appoint a black woman to the SCOTUS was already troubling enough. But the fact that so many people have come out their fields talking about, well, what about civil rights? You got idiots like Charlie Crist talking about, well, I just don't feel this is right. I don't feel like this is right. What if your job all of a sudden said that they could only hire an African-American woman to replace you? And it's like, if my job has only had white people, and Mr. Sykes, somebody really close to me dinged your hiring history. So maybe you need to sit this one out, Chief, because your diversity record isn't great there, buddy. But if my job didn't have African-American women, I would want them to hire them. Because FYI, when we work for you, we do a good job. And we have to, because we have to be twice as better as the mediocre white candidate that you would rather hire because their names don't sound exotic. You just want supposed safety and then get mad because that mediocre person that you hired over the person that sounded too exotic for you isn't doing the work. That old lazy stereotype that seeped in to our society about black workers ignores the fact that one of the highest demographics to graduate from college, I'm one of them, whether it was a technical associate degree or not, are black women. Why? Because even getting an entry-level position job, I knew I had to have some form of degree. I wasn't going to waltz in with a fucking high school diploma and get a fucking job. I have to be twice, if not 10 times, as better as some doofus who just happens to have a lack of melanin. So when you say things like, oh, will a black woman even be qualified for the SCOTUS? How fucking dare you? Do you realize what black women have to go through just to get through law school? One of the things that irked me about working in finance when I was a bookkeeper was the affirmative action jokes. Because affirmative action did shit all for me. There were plenty of little white girls that got to go to college on affirmative action. I did not. Yeah, I had to deal with jokes, especially in the 90s. The 90s was brutal for that dumb shit. Oh, you must have been an affirmative action hire. As the only fucking black person within the company. You can only put on the fake smile and the laugh. While inside you're like, if those motherfuckers say this one more time, I'm going to put a pen through their eye. Like, it was so frustrating. Exactly. They did benefit the most from it. That's why they're so fucking crickets now. Talking about qualifications. These are the same people who will go on about welfare queens, ignoring the fact that most people on welfare are their demographic, and most of the people arrested for welfare fraud are their demographic. But they don't want to talk about that. No, the myths of blacks being lazy, the myths of blacks being on this and that. Like it's shameful to need help in the first freaking place. Getting subsidies that are nothing but handouts. But oh, don't give it to anybody else. They're milking the government. They're milking the government. Yeah. Y'all. And it plays all back into our education system. We do not develop people's brains in our schools. We don't develop their emotional maturity. We don't develop their emotional empathy. I told the story of the Challenger earlier on Twitter, and I mean this. When I was in the 4th grade, is when the Challenger, and I hate using explosion, the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy happened. I remember sitting in my 4th grade teacher's class. We were excited because not only was Ronald McNair going up into space, which for us, being black kids in the elementary school meant the world, but a teacher was going up into space, and they hyped this up for a while. I watched news programs where they were showing her training. So we were all watching with bated breath this historical moment of space technology. And then we seen the smoke and the fire and what looked to be an explosion. The TV got shut off. It was rolled out of the classroom. And we were nothing. Nobody talked to us. It was like it didn't happen at all. And it wasn't until I got home that afternoon and I went to my grandmother because she was one of the few people in my life that would talk to me. Like, I know you're a child, but I know you also are very inquisitive. And we dialogued about this. And I'm grateful that I had my grandmother because nobody else around me was making this shit make sense. And I think it's a large part, especially of my generation and older, to instead of speaking on tragedy, just let's not talk about it. And it's like that way too much. I'm grateful for the digital age because we're getting away from that. But it is painful because I came from the mindset of, we don't want to talk about that bad. Let's not talk about it. Push the TV out of the classroom. These are kids in 4th grade. I was 9 going on 10, man. I didn't know what's going on. Nobody let me know if those people were all right. And now, with the stuff that has come out years later about how people said this flight shouldn't have went off, how they didn't even challenge the fact that these rings weren't properly stored, but just the horrors of the fact that they made it back to land in a capsule that was burning up. Real history is brutal. Real history is honest. Real history is a mirror to our society, and that's why a lot of people don't want us to learn it. And when 9/11 happened, my son wasn't even born yet. But I still, every September 11th, let him know what happened, how I felt that day. I wasn't even home in New York when it happened. I was at work. And I will never forget this day because I went into work early and I put on Howard Stern. And I used to listen to him because we could only listen to talk radio in the office. And I remember just that day feeling off. But I remember it clear. The first plane hit and the way he was like, no, this can't be happening. And it was like they were watching the news and reporting it back. And he stayed on that whole entire day. And I kept him on as I went. They sent me home. Because I at that point, I was losing my shit. I had a cousin who was a Port Authority cop and several uncles who were FDNY. And I don't know if you know anything about ladder families. It doesn't matter what borough they're from. When there's a tragedy that big, every ladder is called into play. So I've got an uncle that I'm very close to already down there on the scene, a cousin who's a cop down there. It was a fucking nightmare, and my job knew there was no way I could sit through any freaking office meetings. Let's send this girl home. And I kept Howard Stern on that whole entire day. And that is why every September 11th, I relayed to my kid how I was feeling. Because that tragedy could have been a lot worse. And thank God, both my cousin and my uncle were okay. Because they did not go into the buildings, thank God. But there were a lot of people that weren't. An aunt who was actually in the building who lost her mind afterwards. Because survivor guilt on top of seeing coworkers die gets to you. It changed her whole fucking outlook and perspective. I don't know if she'll ever be all right again, and I don't think you can be. But we have real conversations because you should talk to your kids about these things. And that is a big part of education as well. And it's not an easy part of education because a lot of us come from generational, we don't want to talk about the bad. Don't bring it up. It'll go away. That is not how this works. That is why we are still in the stranglehold of all kinds of bigotry and isms. Because there are people who benefit from it who don't want us talking about it. People who are victims of it who think, if I don't talk about it, maybe it won't be so bad. And shining a light on it is the only way for people to see how ridiculous it is. And instead, we have people who are actively fighting against any taught history, any taught emotional maturity, any tragedy that hurts their feelings, any lessons that make them look less than perfect. And that is why we need better educational centers. I don't need any more schools. Schools are always federally backed, which means whoever in charge gets to say how much funding they have, how much this, how much that. We need actual community centers. Places that we as a community can go to educate, to learn, has no ties to any spirituality. And I'm sorry, I don't care if this offends you. I'm not anti-religion, but I am tired of the religious touch in education. If you want to learn theology, we can have courses for that too. But as far as I'm concerned, I would not want an official faith putting their hands in these community centers either, because of the fact that it is never unbiased. They can't just put their hands in it with a donation and say, okay, here's a donation. We like what you're doing. No, okay, here's a donation, but we don't want you teaching this because it goes against our doctrines. So no, I don't want any of those ties to this. I think education centers need to be that. A person comes and they want to teach a course. Let's say they have experience with fixing things and light plumbing, or they have the ability to teach fixing tech. You realize how many people could benefit from being able to pop open their systems and know which parts are what? There are a lot more people fascinated in computer technology than just the IT part, but they don't know where to learn. Having a center where they can do that. And even basic skills. You realize how many people here in America, and after TikTok, you should know how many people in America don't know how to do basic cooking? And this is not to shame people. But the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of grown adults that don't have basic learning functions. I might have had a crazy background, y'all, full of people with more money than brains sometimes, and people prepping for the end of the earth. But I am grateful for all the lessons I got. I'm glad that I was told you need to learn how to cook because it's a survival skill. You need to learn how to shoot. Everything was done for survival skills. And I, as a kid, thought it was dumb, but those skills have helped me survive. So you might knock some of them weirdo preppers, and some of them do deserve it. But the skills that you can learn to survive under different circumstances is something that most humans should strive to have. Because if this world went to shit and you didn't have Wi-Fi and access to clean water, what would you do? If you don't know how to grow food, what would you do? One of the things that people were rallying against, and I get what they were saying because it was kind of an asinine tweet. This guy talking about, well, if more people grew farms and had hens, who's giving you the money to get a farm and hens? The property I'm currently on now, and we're gonna move. That's another thing I've been dealing with, y'all. We're definitely moving out of this place. I wanted to start an above ground garden stuff like I had in Durham. The people that still technically own this property, because I'm paying the mortgage on it, doesn't want that and constantly gives me excuses to why I can't have that or build a greenhouse. So it has been an ongoing pain in my ass, and I miss gardening. I have freaking bags of seeds that are doing nothing right now. And it's stressing me out because gardening was my way to relax. It was therapy for me that I have no access to because of where I'm currently living. So we are in the process of setting the move because I can't stay here. I can't be on land and pay for land that I can't utilize. But to have somebody go, if everybody was doing that, not everybody knows. I remember, and it's funny because a friend of mine, and I'm not going to give his name, but he'll know I'm talking about him, dinged me a few years back because I was like, you need to garden. I know it doesn't seem like easy, and I was the same way 10 years ago. If somebody had told old New Yorkton especially, oh, you can grow your own garden, I was like, get the fuck out of here. I got a grocery store. When I learned, and you got to trial and error anything. But when I started to learn how to plant and raise bulbs and do all that stuff, and it's a very hands-on learning, it changed my world, and he did it too. And now him and his wife send me pictures every once in a while of their above ground garden. They are so into it, it's not even funny. Because it really is not only that relaxing, but it helps with your bills. Growing vegetables especially can help you with all sorts of issues with if you're worried about GMOs, if you're worried about the government putting chemicals in your food, all the other fucking asinine conspiracies. But we're not all in situations where we can even grow. You can't tell kids from the projects just grow your own food and keep a hen. What the fuck are they gonna keep a hen in the projects? People like that don't think. They want to say they're all for poverty and stick it up for the working class. They don't care about the working class. They're just trying to elevate themselves so they can look down on the so-called real working class. And that's another problem with our current system. The elitism is so fucking ridiculous that the people they claim to be for, they don't care about. They're not worrying about that kid that's going to bed right now with only a school meal in their belly if they're lucky. They don't care about these people because poverty porn gets them clicks and views, gets people donating to whatever Patreon they got going on so that they don't end up poor. That's why they can make asinine comments about having hens and all that. Y'all, I'm telling you. And it comes down to our education. And we cannot afford anymore to keep putting our kids through the structured, standardized test taking facility that's trying to weed out. If your kid shows any kind of aptitude and smarts, you might get lucky and they might get a middle management job at their best. But they're not being trained for any passionate thing. They are being molded into good little serfs. And if that angers you and you don't want that, then you need to right now make sure that you find out what your kid's passionate about. Nurture it. It doesn't matter if it can make them millions of dollars, because that's not what we should be going for in the first fucking place. When Kiddo told me he wanted to be a marine biologist, the first thing that played in my mind was the same shit my family said to me when I wanted to be a historian. Well, how can he make a career out of that? All the stuff he'll have to deal with because he's a black male. And I was like, you know what, Tim? We're not going to repeat that cycle. Your baby who was non-verbal, his first full sentence is, I am going to be a marine biologist. So fuck anybody who tries to stand in the way of my baby becoming a marine biologist. But I realized that to have that happen, I can't just rely on his school. I look at the programs that we currently have to navigate through, and I realize that his education needs a lot of supplement. And we constantly do it. He's got several learning apps that he uses. We dialogue all the time. We have all kinds of programs on the TV that we watch together now too. And we've been watching nature shows since he was a little tyke. To have his goal and dream happen, I have to be a proactive parent. I can't treat his school like, oh, this is going to get him out of my hair for a full few hours. No. Beyond the IEP, I am constantly dialoguing with his teachers, making lists of what he has to do during the day. You have to be an interactive parent to have an interactive education for your kid. It is vital. Even if your kid doesn't have any disorders or cognitive functions messing with their ability to learn like the so-called normal kids, your participation is key to their education being well-rounded. One of the things that bothers me about current school systems is what's deemed financeable. When I went to school, you had arts, you had music, and those weren't just electives, those were mandatory. Music appreciation, music history, art history. Classes that went along with the reading, writing, arithmetic, and science that are supposed standards. Nowadays, you're lucky if your school can afford to have a music program, and heaven forbid you want to play an instrument. It is ridiculous the amount of things that the school system have let fall to the wayside in order to make the quotas needed to get federal funding. And we need people in our federal, and especially on our state and local levels, who understand that our kids are not there to take tests. They're there to learn. They're there to process the things they're learning and to hold on to the things they're learning and grow from that. And to put the pressures on a kid to test and get a number that matches or may not match other kids. No. I don't accept the way our school systems are. And I hate that my kid has to do this, but we're still in a society where a piece of paper gets you further than actually knowing what you're talking about. I would rather listen to my son talk about the ocean than most things. Outside Jacques Cousteau, I've never met anybody else as passionate about the oceans as this child has been since he was a little kid. And as he's gotten older, he has just developed this love of the sea and what's in it. to the point where it's branched out to not just the biology side of it, but everything in the ocean. We were talking about ocean archaeology for a bit there too, and his eyes lit up. And this is the kind of stuff that when your kid has that spark for, schools should be working with that. But a lot of schools will crush that spark. Tell them, no, you got to get a regular 9 to 5 to prove your worth, and I'm not down for that anymore. It is unacceptable that our educational system denies kids their passion. Whether that passion is in arts, science, gaming, because whether people like that or not, gaming is a frontier that's been around for a while and encompasses so many people's lives. And you could be denying technology that could be freaking revolutionary for humans. There was a young man, and I wish I really need to start linking articles because I love this story. Little 14-year-old child was using a medical simulator that helped people in OBGYN medicine with fibroid surgery and other technology that they're going to use for procedures that I'm going through right now. I have to have a fibroid removed. A 14-year-old child using a medical simulator, which is basically a video game. This is why we need education to stoke passions and definitely respect. No Child Left Behind was such garbage. And George Bush and plenty of other people pushed that, and they're still using that tired tactic even with this new administration. And I don't want to ding Joe Biden for this shit because he has enough on his shoulders right now with picking our new SCOTUS. But the fact of the matter is, penalizing schools for not getting a certain testing needs to go to the wayside. Schools need funding to run, sadly. And if you're not going to fund schools, they are not going to teach our kids. And I'm sorry, parent attitudes help make it harder too. When you're a closed-minded bigot who thinks a book about the Holocaust showing naked mice is too much for you, and you're willing to storm the school boards where the rest of us just sit home because what can we do? That lack of action versus their action is part of the problem. And if you think this is just going to stop with Mouse being banned or Beloved being banned or anything they deem CRT, you're in the wrong. They're already running campaigns based on this stuff. They're already telling us, and they've been telling us, what they deem is too woke. They run to their podcast and they anti-vax and they huff cattle medicine because they are fully indoctrinated by their bigotry. I'm not ready to reach out to them. I can't. I want to talk to the rest of you who understand this system ain't working. It's broken. It's why we have so much anxiety. If you want things to change, we have to, on a freaking full front, take our education. Start building our own centers. Start grouping. Right now, we can't congregate because of COVID. But we meet up for Zoom to talk politics. We use these spaces to chillax and talk social issues. Spaces are a new frontier for education. And it's one of the few newer Twitter things because they've been on my nerves with some of their new features. Like telling me who to like. No, I don't need you helping me with likes. If I like somebody, I can see it myself. Twitter, thank you. But we have the ability to group and educate each other, and that's what we need to be doing. And women, especially, because they don't want us to have a matriarchal society. And we've already seen how education separates us by gender and make women feel like we're just there to be there, but our roles is to be a mommy. We need to get away from that mindset. And we need to take on that matriarchal role of educating. For years, they wanted us to not have knowledge because they realize knowledge is power. They realize that a smart woman is a dangerous woman. And we need to take that power away from those who would rather keep us dumb and obedient and start learning. That is our best tool. It is our best shield. It is our best weapon in this digital dark age right now, because that's what we're going through. We are in a dark age where a lot of awful, angry, ignorant people are congregating and trying to control the narrative of what people can learn, what's acceptable. Science bad. My feelings good. It is going to be on us who see this shit, who can be logical, who understand what's important, to group together and start educating, using our voice, using the tools offered to us to teach. It really will make a difference, y'all. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up, though. I can't believe an hour's passed by. Honestly, I love doing these Bonnet Chronicles, for real. I really appreciate you joining me in the chat. Respect, G. Feldman, Zai, everybody. I really look forward to doing these now. I will be back Tuesday night. I've got to do some research on it. We are going to start talking upcoming elections. I am serious about keeping people focused on the midterms. I am serious about keeping people focused on everything we can do to not only support our national government, but make our state and local government better. And this all ties into education, because if we want these learning centers, if we want to be able to educate ourselves, we need to make sure that the people in charge don't limit our internet. That's another thing that we got to worry about, depending on who's in power. There are people who want to push net neutrality. That could be a whole nother cast itself. So I'm telling you, Tuesday nights are going to be special focus on our upcoming midterm elections. So I look forward to that. I hope you all have a great night. I will see some of you soon, because I love to lurk in your streams. But I am going to go make dinner for Axiom and I and take it easy. And I will see y'all next week. Love y'all.